Hello everyone and welcome to my coloring corner. Today is Topic Tuesday and today's topic is going to be how do you activate your Inktense or watercolor pencils. For this demonstration today, I'm going to be using Daydreams, Garden Daydreams by Monique Day Wild. I have had this book and I've colored in this book like 3 times and I completely missed the word garden. Just like, how blind are you, Renee? Um, so yeah, I've got a piece of paper towel here and things to activate with, and I have my Inktense. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the different ways of activating Inktense. So you can use a finesse brush. This is a blender brush, a water or an alcohol based blender brush for wax colored pencils, and it works fantastic on wax colored pencils, but it also works on activating the Inktense. However, it's an extra thing to buy. You don't need to buy this. Another one you don't need to buy but does work very, very nicely is a koi coloring brush. This is also a water-based, this one is a water-based dye stuff ink. So this is to activate ink stuff. So using this on your watercolor pencils or your Inktense pencils, that sort of thing, it will work brilliantly. And it is actually created to work for this kind of thing as well as blending colored pencil. This one here is a water base, and this one here is an alcohol base. It doesn't say anywhere on it that it is. However, when I open it, I get a really strong smell of alcohol. And then, of course, this one here is called a brush marker blender. It is a blender for the Caron watercolor brushes. And it's got a really good, nice brush type nib on it. And it is basically a blender brush for the Caron um, markers. It will work as well. And then, of course, we have our basic alcohol blender. Now, every set of alcohol markers, if you have alcohol markers, you know every set of alcohol markers comes with a blender. Now, you can use the brush end, which, as you can see, I've used. It is stained. So you can use the brush end or you can use the chisel end, or if you have a nib, you can use a nib. And then of course we have our watercolor brush, our water brush. Now you can also use a paint brush, but I didn't grab any water this morning, so it's been a bit of a bad day. So we're going to work in this book here, and I'm just going to grab a piece of paper to go behind the page, just in case we get some. This one here I did all in Inktense. Let's find a fairly simple picture that has lots of different areas that we can color. So we need at least 5 areas. So we'll do this one here. And I'll switch you over to the close-up camera here so you can see what I'm doing. I hope everybody has been having a good week. I must apologize to the people out in Discord land because I did not go into Discord yesterday. I was not feeling good and didn't want to be a Debbie Downer in there, so I didn't go. Now, I'm going to use some bright colors, so we'll start with some light yellows and work into some orange. So I've got a light yellow, a medium yellow, and an orange. So I've got cadmium yellow, golden yellow, and cadmium orange. So let's start. Oh, let's start here. Oh, I'm going the wrong way altogether first. So we're going to start down here with the orange in the shadowy area. Now you don't have to go very far with these. So you can brush these onto a palette, which I will also show you here, and pick them up with a brush and put them down. Or you can just color straight on the page and work into the areas you want to work into. Now, as you can see, I'm leaving gaps because you don't have to go too deep into where you're going, because you're going to be spreading that color around. And then at the tips, we'll use the bright yellow. Now, if you want that orange to stay down at the bottom, of course, go from light to dark when you're activating. So we'll start at the tips and we'll work our way in. Like so. Okay, now let's do our first brush. The first brush I'm going to use is the watercolor brush. Now this is a water brush. It is filled with water, as you can see, and it's got a good nib. And you wipe off the tip so that you don't take any of that darker color into your lighter colors. And as you can see, it works quite well. The paint gets activated and moves around and everything else. And of course, we have our handy dandy dryer all ready to go. And as you can see, I'm pulling from the orange and moving it up here. You just move that color around to where you want it to be. Like so. Now with Inktense especially, once you dry it, it is where it is. That's it. You can't move it around again, which is great, because then you can go over top of it with a different color and do different techniques. Where with a colored watercolor pencil, which is another thing that I will be showing on the page. I have my Flowwood watercolor pencils out as well, so that we can see the difference between, say, the Inktense, which is a water activated or liquid activated ink, compared to a watercolor pencil. This is a watercolor paint in a pencil form. And when you activate it, sorry, I'm just opening the case here. Yeah, okay. So when you activate it, you will find that when you go back to it, it will reactivate. So this is a watercolor pencil. So all watercolor pencils will state watercolor pencil on it. This one is number 10 and this one is number 8. So number 10 we're going to put down in here. And we're going to do our edges. And I'll show you what I mean by after you have it down, how it reactivates. just going through and coloring these areas here. And the center area we're going to do in the yellow. Now the flow woods don't have any names on them, just the numbers, which is fine. Okay, now we're going to add the yellow. And I'm not putting it everywhere, just in areas that I want it to be. You will find with the watercolor pencils, the harder you press, the brighter the color is going to be. So you have to be careful not pulling a darker color into a lighter color or vice versa, because you can wash out the other color. Alright, so we're going to do this with the watercolor brush as well and activate it. Now, as you can see, it still activates with the water, which is what we want, and it still drags. But when we put the next color on after I dry it, you're going to see that the water itself will still activate this orange and yellow. Bring that down in here. Make sure that you get all of your pigment activated. Otherwise, when you go over it, you definitely will pull more color. So it looks very, very nice. It's activating quite nicely. There's no granules, no graininess, nothing like that. I shouldn't have done that, but that's okay. But it's a lot more vibrant than this side here. And that's just because I pressed harder. Okay, we're going to dry this. And then we're going to go over it with some red. And then we'll activate that red in the center area. And I'll show you how the paint will reactivate. Alright, so let's grab this one here. Maybe this one. I think I want decisions, decisions, decisions. I want a nice bright red, so I think I want this one right here. And we're going to do this center area. In this bright red. And these little dots here too. Add some more red there. This area. Just adding the little dots there so that when I activate those, you'll see how it reactivates that yellow area as well. Alright, let's wipe that off. Get some more water going here. Now, as you can see, that yellow gets reactivated as well. So with this, with watercolor pencil, if you find that you or have a splotch somewhere or whatnot, you can reactivate that and it works out quite nice. However, with the Inktense, instead of reactivating it and spreading it out and smoothing it out, you can easily just add a little bit more color, which is what we're going to do on the other side here, and move it around. So I'm just activating that red, moving it around. The way that you know if your pencil is fully activated is you don't get that hard line of the pencil. It doesn't go all grainy looking. This one's really small, so I'm going to do this part with one of the easier to use nibs, just to break it down a little bit more and move it around. So as you can see, with the nib of this keratin brush, I'm able to break that down and move it around. And once again, you just wipe off the brush nib and get it all cleaned off, and you're all done. So that's the difference between watercolor and Inktense. So I'm just going to go over the Inktense. We're going to add a little bit more of the yellows. And a little bit more of the orange to those edges. And then we're going to add a little bit of red as well after we activate this and dry it. So I had some spots that I didn't feel were very well covered, so I went through, added a little bit more so that we can cover those areas. Now this paper is not made whatsoever for watercolor. It is nice paper for colored pencils, not so great for watercolor. And that's one reason why I like the Inktense, is it takes so little water to activate it and blend it out that most papers can deal with it. So I'm just going to dry this, and then we'll add the red, and I'll show you how the red doesn't change. Okay, make sure that's all nice and covered up there. Now we're going to grab some red. Let's grab this one here. So a little bit of chili red. So I'm just going to go in here. We're not trying to reactivate that orange, so that's why I dried it first. If it is still left a bit wet, yes, the colors will combine, and yes, they will blend together. My brush, and then we're just going to go from here into here. As you can see, that red activated, but the yellow did not. It is a chili red, so it does have a bit of an orange undertone to it, which is a good thing on this part of the picture. Now we're going to do this part. you can move it around without making a mess of what you've already put down. Without making mud, basically. Okay, and that's it with the watercolor brush. And just going to dry that out. So that I don't stick my hand in it and make a mess. Alright, so now we're going to do the same thing on one of these other ones here, and we're going to do the whole thing with the Inktense. So I'm putting down the yellow, and I'm putting it everywhere because I picked up a pencil and my brain immediately went to pencil. So let's see how this works. I'm going to be layering the colors on top of each other for this one because, yeah, my brain immediately went to, okay, you've got a color pencil in your hand. Let's put down a light layer of the base and then work from there. Well, that doesn't work very well in colored pencil land, or in Inktense land, but that's okay. We will work with it. You don't need to cover this much of your picture with your pencil. You can drag it and get a good level of color. Alright, so I'm just putting in all of the shadowy type of areas here. With that orange. I know these are leaves and they're, but I like orange leaves. So I'm just putting in that medium, bringing it out. Like I said, this is going to look a lot different because of the fact that I did put down a base color, so that light yellow is going to activate along with the orange and the yellows, the medium yellows, and possibly make things a little bit more yellow than orange, which is fine in itself. But because I put down that entire base layer, it will activate with the it'll activate as a light yellow underneath, which will blend in to everything else as a dark yellow. Alright, so let's do this one with the Koi. Okay, so this is a Koi coloring brush pen. This is a water-infused ink. Water-based dye stuff ink. So we're going to start up here in the light, drag it all the way down into that medium. Here. Just remember to wipe off your pen. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. And when you get into a medium area or a light area, just wipe off your pen if you have any dark on it. And as you can see, it activates it very, very nicely. Everything is fully activated and it blends it very, very pretty without lifting up too much of the ink that the book is created with. And I do suggest that after every pass, that you try to remember to wipe your pen. Only so, especially if you have everything laid out the way you want it to be laid out, and you don't want to drag that pencil around. So if you have it exactly where you want that pencil to be, and you've covered that entire area, and make sure that you drag your pen across a piece of part piece of paper or a paper towel just to wipe that coloration off. Now we're going to take the chili. Now this does not require the heat gun. It does dry very quickly on its own, so you're not going to have to dry it with a heat gun like it's already dry. Alright, so if I go off of these lines with the red and go into the orange, it will give me a red orange without mixing it together and making it muddy, because the orange is still there underneath, and just like any other color pencil, when you put a color over top of another color, that color is going to change. However, it's due to them being blended together. This is due to the pigmentation being a little bit thinner. So that one was done with the Koi coloring brush. You can use this on Inktense, you can use this on watercolor pencils. You can use it on color pencils and it works perfectly fine. So the one thing with the water-based one is it doesn't dry as quickly as the alcohol base. So we're going to do one with an alcohol base as well, and that will be our 3 tests. Water, water brush, blender brush, and an alcohol blender brush. You can also put these down dry. However, it's kind of not something that we do. You can color dry with a watercolor pencil. I have done it before, though it be it accidentally or not, but I have done it. My original colored pencils were watercolor pencils, and I did not know that. And I colored with them dry all the time until my mom said, yeah, that looks really dull because it's a watercolor pencil. You're supposed to add water to make it all pretty." And it's like, oh my god, cool. And it looks so much prettier once I added water. Yep, I'm a dork. It's okay. I didn't know. It was, I didn't know there was any such thing as a watercolor pencil. It was like, those are colored pencils. Colored pencils are colored pencils. I did not know there was any such thing as a watercolor pencil. I know, right? Can we say Dorcas among us? So I'm putting in the medium now. We've put down the orange, and I'm going to leave the edges available for the light. Not putting down a whole lot of it like I did on this one because brain is working again. It's okay. And then we're going to put some here. Like that. And then we're going to do our light. Now the one thing about the water brush, the finesse water color pencil thing, the koi water brush thing, this one. The one thing about this is it does not put a lot of liquid on the paper, so moving that pigment around can be a little more difficult. Now this is the alcohol blender, and we're going to go light to dark. Now the one thing that I noticed using the alcohol blenders, and you can tell me if you feel the same way, but I feel that it dulls down the pigment a little bit. I don't know why. It might be just me. It just might be me putting too much alcohol down or me not putting enough pigment down. Let me know your thoughts on that. I'm not as proficient with these than others on YouTube. So, yeah, tell me how you feel about it, what you think about it. So, with it being Topic Tuesday, and the topic being how to activate your watercolor mediums, your Inktense pencils, your watercolor pencils. Leave a comment in the comment section below of how you activate yours and what you find works the best for you. You know, it doesn't have to be how you think other things should work or how you have seen other people do it. Let me know how it works for you and what works the best for you. And I seriously think it's the pigmentation that I don't put on enough pigment. So, for example, this one here was done with this brush, and this one here was done with this brush. And I'm wondering if I just don't put down enough pigment. Just waiting for that to dry. The one thing you will also notice with the water, with these brushes, is the water will warp your paper. These brushes do not, which is awesome. Alright, so we're going to put in some red. And hopefully it will brighten up things a little bit now that it's dry. And give us that bright color contrast. I think I'm going to add some orange in here too. The one thing about the Inktense especially is if you find that you have washed away some of your color or lifted up too much of your ink with your brush, let it dry and then you can go over it. So you're not bound to just that layer. And because it is Inktense, it's not going to lift up the previous layer. So you can put new layers down on top of it. So I don't think I have enough orange in here. So I'm just going to add a little bit more while I'm adding it to the other areas there. I think I want a little bit more in here too. There we go. So once again, going over it with the, oh dear, I think I put it on wrong. There we go. The alcohol marker. And I'm going to go into the orange, extra orange that we added first. And these little areas here. Wipe the pen. Make sure that I'm not dragging red around in areas we don't want it. I'm just activating that orange and darkening that area up where I felt it was a little bit lacking. Like so. Alright, now we're going to activate that red. Now I did put some orange in the red, just to give it a little bit more oomph, because this is a little bit longer, a little bit wider. I'm using the same 4 pencils, the cadmium orange, the cadmium yellow, the golden yellow, and what's the other one? Chili red, sorry. Like that. And I do want those two orange and red colors to combine. Now I feel it's a little bit off on the red, so I'm going to check it, make sure it's dry. And I'm just going to add some more red. So I can add another layer of red and make this a darker red. Now I don't have to go all heavy-handed, different area all the way through. We can definitely just add some color, activate it, and go to the next area. The nib is going to pick up just a slight amount of that color. And because we're not doing any other colors, I'm not worried about spreading that color elsewhere. The other color underneath is already dry, so I'm not worried about lifting that color up into it either. Like so. And there we have it. So there's 3 different ways of coloring with the Inktense. Is the water, of course. There is also the water koi coloring brush nib pen, and of course the alcohol blender. Now with the brush pen as well as the alcohol blender, you're not going to get this warping of the paper that you do here. Another way that you can use your marker, or your, not marker, your Inktense, is you can use a tablet, a palette. So if you're going to use a palette, let's start with the orange. You rub it on the palette and you activate it on the palette. So this is one that you would use your brush pen for. So you activate it on the palette, pick up that color, fill your brush with it, and then you add it to your page like so. And it does work very, very nicely. And it ensures that you get fully activated ink. And this you can do with watercolor pencils as well. You can brush them on your palette and paint them on. Now this does wash off, but it will stain a bit. So be careful. When you wash it, you will find that it will stain a little bit. So don't freak out. It's just, I do anyway. I find that it stains. Okay, and once again, wipe your brush clean. Now you can either use the water that's in the brush to clean it, or you can get a dip thing so that you can put the water in some dip. Up to you. Now I want some dark yellow. Again, scribbling it on the palette, activating it on the palette. Picking it all up with my brush and just going into it with the brush. Now this does dry quite quickly unless you put too much water on it. With the watercolor brush, it all depends upon how much water your brush is expelling. But if you're used to using a brush with water, you can definitely do it this way using a water color brush or a paintbrush. And I'm going to show you that here in just a moment as well. So I'm just going to take the excess ink here and I'm just going to fill that all in. And then we're going to put some red on the palette here as well. Activate the red, pick it all up into the brush. As you can see, it fills that brush quite quickly. So on. And it dries enough that it doesn't interact and combine with those other colors. But it does lift the page this way. So just be careful. And it does wash out the colors a little bit more. The good thing about this method is you can take those colors off your palette onto your brush and completely make a new color. Like so. Alright, so I'm going to take my paper towel and I'm just going to put a bit of water on the palette here. And I'm going to wipe this off. And lift up some of that ink. And we'll show you how that works with a a paintbrush, a basic paintbrush. Okay, so I have just a cheapo regular paintbrush here. Now I am going to use my water brush as the water source for this because I don't have a glass of water because aren't I silly? Okay, so, and I will use the water brush to activate it. So basically you just take go with the orange. So basically you just take your color the same way you did with the water brush. You activate it on the palette. So I'm just going to put a drop of water on it. And then you just rub it around with your brush. Pick it up. And the same thing. Just put it down. Now you will find that you have a lot more water on the brush. But you can do it this way. You can also, when you sharpen your pencils, take the sharpenings and do it that way, or you can just take it straight from the pencil itself. If you do this straight from the pencil itself, just remember that that is wet and it needs to be dried off before you put your pencils back. And as you can see, you get a lot of pigment straight from the pencil. So it is definitely something you can do. However, personally, I don't like going straight from the pencil because I find it can damage the pencil. But it is definitely something you can do. So I'm just going to go straight from the pencil with this one, and I'm going to grab that yellow, and I'm going to wipe this pencil off on my paper towel, drying it, making sure that it's fully dry before I put it away. So I've got that yellow on here now, as well as some red, creating that orange. And because this is very wet, it's combining with everything else that's on the page that's still wet, which is typical. And I've still got some red on the back side. So yes, you can use a brush, a paint brush as well. Sometimes it gives you a lot of control, um, depending upon the brush. Sometimes using the markers gives you more control and damages the paper less. So if you're coloring in a coloring book like this, I strongly suggest that you use either this one, or this one. If you are coloring, or this one as well, anything that is a blender pencil there, or a pencil blender brush, or a marker blender brush. So if you're coloring in a coloring book itself that has fairly thin paper, I strongly suggest that you use this method. If you are coloring or painting on canvas board or anything like that, absolutely you can use your brush method. I do find that I have the ability to mix and control that medium a little bit more directly from the pencil or directly from the palette. And it wastes, I think it wastes less if you go directly from the palette. However, and you can do it with the alcohol marker and that sort of thing. However, it does mix a little bit too much of the stuff that's in it, I find, and it does bleed it out. It fades it quite a bit. So this is the other option. The only thing about the finesse is the nib itself ends up getting all fuzzy really quickly. You can pull it out, but it doesn't flip. But the tip itself gets, yeah, not all that great, but it does work to move that color around. The only problem is that I find it has that wonky nib, and I don't like that very much. I do like this nib on it though. This nib works really, really well, especially getting into those finer details to activate those. It works really nicely in there. I hadn't activated those. What other ones didn't I activate? Did I activate these? I think I did. But it gets right down into those really fine details and works very much like a bullet pen, which is great. Alright guys, so those are my recommendations on how to activate your Inktense pencils, as well as how to activate your watercolor pencils as well. You can definitely use this type of direction with either. So I've activated them with water there, as you know, and I think this one here will activate just to show that it can be done um, with alcohol, the alcohol base. Now the only thing that I suggest is put down your colors first, all of them, because this will end up being reactivated if you put down too many water areas or too much liquid. So if you're going to do a background, you may want to not go over top of this color. Alright, now we'll put some yellow in. And I do find that these are very vibrant watercolor pencils, so they are really bright. And I'm just covering the whole space very loosely, just basically scribbling it on. And I'm not even showing you what I'm doing here. Isn't that nice of me? I knew I had to go off camera at some point today. It's just what I do, right? Now we're just going to put in some red. Like so. I'm doing this very, very quickly, very sloppily, and I'm kind of doing that on purpose. So I'm going to use the alcohol marker. That's the word I'm looking for. And as you can see, it does activate that pigment. Go into the red. And pull it into the yellow. Yeah, like that. Now I am pulling these colors together on purpose in some spots. Lost my little rubber. Lost my cleaner. And then in other spots I'm being very careful not to blend too much of that red into anything. And there we have it. As you can see, you can use your alcohol marker for your watercolor pencils as well. It works just as well for the Inktense as it does for the watercolor pencils. And again, it doesn't go through the page. Once that dries, that will disappear. However, with the water base, you can probably see the shadowing and the wrinkling that is created from the watercolor, the water itself. So that is, if you're coloring in a coloring book, that is the best possible alternative, is the alcohol pen or the koi brush pen. If you don't like the smell of the alcohol, this is a water-based product and it doesn't smell at all. So that one I would suggest as well. Another one, if you need a bullet nib, small bullet nib, is the Finesse or the Karen. The Karen is a more expensive blender. Um, I don't use it a whole lot because it is expensive and I don't want to replace it. So I do use it every once in a while. Another thing that you can use is the Tombow brush marker blender pen as well. I do not have one. Otherwise, I would have shown that as well. Alright guys, leave your comments below the video on what you use to activate your colored pencils, watercolor pencils, or your Inktense, watercolor crayons, anything like that. Let me know how you activate those. And that is going to be our topic of the week. Of course, our topic of the week is Inktense. This was just my way of activating, my different ways of activating Inktense, and the things I have found with using those different media activations. They all have their place, absolutely. And the great thing that I find, especially with the alcohol marker, is it activates it, it dries really fast, and I can reactivate it very quickly. So that's great for me. I really like that. Alright guys, until next time, thank you all very much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day. Always remember to like, comment, and subscribe to any YouTube channel that you watch. It does help us out quite a bit. Hitting that like button gives us a lot of different perks within the YouTube algorithm. So please make sure you hit that like button. And always be kind to each other. Remember to relax, color, and stay safe. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye bye for now.